Welcome to Management of Red Flag Reviews, an important part of your risk management strategy. The goal of this section is to improve the efficiency and the efficacy of your reviews. I'm going to discuss 4 key topics for your red flag reviews. First, identifying the clean files. Second, focusing on key documents. 3, knowing normal versus abnormal. And finally, staying current on emerging trends. There are several reasons you might be conducting red flag reviews. You may be reviewing files of new clients, or you might have outliers on a data scrub you've done of defaults or LTVs or geography. Let's just say that you have 20 files to review and you have the loan numbers and you can get to them in your LOS. Let me show you how I would complete this work quickly and effectively. First, find the clean files. Most of your files should be suspicion-free, and your first goal is to identify those clean files in a minimum of time. That way, you can get onto the potential problem files. What does a likely clean file look like? That is going to depend on the type of your business and where you do your business. And who has an opinion that matters here? Your QC staff, for one. So get their input. If you make residential home loans, here's the profile of a typical likely clean mortgage. The loan is a straightforward refinance with no cash out. The borrower's been employed for a long time at the same job with a reasonable salary. He owns no other properties and has been a decade or more in the same house. And the credit is clean. So if that's your loan, that's a quick file. Spend less time on it. That's likely going to be clean. You want to focus your efforts where they matter most, and this file deserves very little attention. So, my recommendation is create your list of what you believe will be similarly low-risk files given your business. Put some work into this. And given your borrower profiles and where you do business and the kind of loans that you make, spend some time and create your list of the files that should pose no risk to you. In a world of limited resources, this helps you effectively allocate yours. Second, let's talk about focusing on the key documents. Once we have the clean files out of the way, our second step is zeroing in on what we need to focus on. And it's easy to get overwhelmed. Your credit file might be 400 pages long, so where do you start? You start with 3 simple documents. First, your 1003, because that contains the basic representations. The 1008, this document shows you what was submitted to underwriting for review. And finally, the closing disclosure, the CD. This document shows where the money went, and oddly, it is almost always truthful. If you had red flags in a residential loan, they'll be waving wildly in one of these 3 documents. First, an observation about the closing disclosure. It's an odd little part of mortgage loan fraud investigation. Almost everything else can be fraudulent in the file, but by the time the CD is generated, it's like they just said whatever, and they put down truthfully where the money went. Sure, we've all seen fraudulent CDs, but it's unusual. It's like seeing a bird in the airport. They're most often a document you can rely on for their truthfulness. Now, the loan application, the 1003, displays red flags proudly. A common red flag might be related to false income or employment. On the application, is the income normal for that position? Is it appropriate for the geography and the age of the client? You might check the address of the employer and find out that it's a residential property, and this would raise a red flag as to why our borrower is listed as a senior executive from a business that's done from somebody's house. My point is that you often see these red flags very clearly in the loan application without having to dig through the verifications of employment and the pay stubs. As an example of red flags just being obvious in the loan application, let's take a look at some occupancy misrepresentations. How many miles are there between the subject property and the place of employment? Does the loan application show a schedule of real estate owned with a lot of properties worth more than the subject property? Again, it's all right there on the application for everyone to see. You have experience, so write up your red flags based on your book of business. Create your P&Ps around those risks, those red flags. The good news is that your red flag reviews don't involve the 400 pages in your credit file, at least not until a quick look can direct you to where else you might want to look. You are really staying in 3 documents: the 1003, the 1008, and the closing disclosure. You know, loan originators develop an odd skill, and underwriters do too. If you tell somebody the age and profession and city of a given borrower, they're going to be able to come pretty close to guessing what that person makes. A 40-year-old machinist in Atlanta, a 30-year-old union construction worker in Philadelphia. People in our industry get pretty good about guessing how much those people make. And when you're looking for red flags, your job is to say, is that likely true? You have to know normal from abnormal. And to do this, you've got to be experienced. And so I would strongly argue that what seems like a boring entry-level job, find my red flags, is really a job for the more experienced among us, those who can look and say, I don't think that's normal. For instance, if you come across a borrower with an unusually high bank balance that does not align with their profile, it should raise an eyebrow and prompt further investigation. So let me tell you a quick story. One time as a loan officer, I was interviewing a 28-year-old woman who was buying a house. She worked in an office as an office manager of her father's printing company, and I asked her about her salary, and she said $400,000. She opened the file in front of her and showed me her pay stubs and 2 years' taxes. It turned out it was all legit. But man, did it catch my attention. What an odd response. 28 years old, an office manager making $400,000. It turns out her father was running an incredibly successful company and all the kids were making this kind of money. But it caught my attention as just wildly out of line for what you would normally expect. And that's what red flag reviews are all about, really, is to catch the abnormal. And I want to make this point. Please make a stark distinction between underwriting and red flag reviews. They are not the same job. Let me tell you a personal story to illustrate the point. My father worked as a judge in Los Angeles until he was 80 years old, and he drove himself to work every day. Now, if my dad applied for a home loan, I would expect that an underwriter would say, terrific, approved. But I would also expect that a red flag reviewer would look at my dad's loan and ask, does this old guy actually drive himself to work every day? Those aren't the same jobs. I know we in the industry get real sensitive about age discrimination and making judgments based on certain categories. That's an underwriter's job. A red flag reviewer's job should be to see things and say, really? Is that true? And there's nothing wrong with that. That is the nature of their job. And finally, you have to stay current on red flag trends. This world of red flags is ever evolving, and to be effective in your reviews, you have to stay up to date on the latest trends. Fannie Mae publishes lists of their problems throughout the United States where they're seeing misrep. There are other places where you can get reliable data. Recently, income and occupancy have topped the list, and when market conditions change, for example, rates go up, volumes go down, we expect to encounter creative employment and income fraud attempts. It just happens, it's part of the cycle, so stay alert. And finally, as part of managing this, bringing together all of your underwriters and processors for regular discussion about what they're seeing in their files is important. Good communication ensures that one person's experiences get infused throughout your entire team, and when team members are not talking, valuable knowledge about what's normal and abnormal gets lost. So keep people talking. It really develops the skill set of everybody on your red flag teams. So to wrap up this lesson on managing red flag reviews, it's an essential part of your risk management strategy. Identify your clean files quickly, focus on key docs, know what's normal and abnormal, and stay current on the trends that are out there that are affecting you and your competitors.